You are not here by accident, but I want to begin today with something that may be the most humiliating question you have ever been asked about yourself. Why do you keep choosing the same person? Not literally the same person, but the same essential quality, the same dynamic, the same relationship that begins with a particular kind of intensity, a specific feeling of recognition, of finally being seen, of having arrived somewhere that feels right in a way you cannot fully explain, and moves with a consistency that defies everything you have learned toward the same essential pain. You have recognized this pattern. You have named it, analyzed it, worked with it in therapy, vowed to do differently. You have made lists of what you want in a partner and chosen people who matched the list. And somehow, underneath the surface differences, the same essential relationship has assembled itself again. This is not stupidity. It is not weakness. It is not evidence that you are broken in a way that cannot be repaired. It is neurology. Specifically, it is the neurology of what the brain has learned to recognize as home. And James Hillman, reading this pattern not only through the lens of neurological habit, but through the deeper lens of what the soul is actually doing when it keeps returning to the familiar, offers an understanding of this that no amount of pattern recognition alone can provide. The soul is not making a mistake when it is drawn to the familiar. It is doing exactly what it learned to do in order to survive the conditions it first encountered love in. And the way forward is not to override this pattern with willpower or with better lists or with the therapeutic insight that you know where it comes from. The way forward is to understand what the pattern has been trying to provide and to begin, slowly and with genuine humility, to provide it differently. Let me tell you about a woman I worked with for 2 years. She was 36 years old. She had been in 3 significant relationships, each of which had produced the same essential experience: initial intensity, the feeling of profound connection, a quality of being seen that she described as addictive, as if the other person's attention was a substance she had been deficient in and had suddenly been given access to. And then, in each case, the withdrawal of that attention. The gradual revelation that the person who had seemed to see her so clearly was, in fact, primarily interested in being seen themselves, that the relationship was organized around their needs in a way that required her to make herself smaller, to need less, to accommodate more, and that the particular intensity she had found so compelling in the beginning was inseparable from the particular dynamic that ultimately required her diminishment. She came to me after the 3rd relationship ended in the same way the 2nd had ended, which had ended in the same way the 1st had. She said, "I know exactly why I do this. I know it goes back to my father. I know the dynamic. I understand it completely. And I am still doing it." That sentence, "I understand it completely, and I am still doing it," is the sentence that contains everything we need to understand about why pattern recognition alone is insufficient, and about what else is required. The brain forms patterns of recognition with extraordinary efficiency. It is one of the most basic and most powerful things the nervous system does. And among the patterns it forms earliest and most deeply are the patterns associated with the experience of being cared for, or failing to be cared for, by the people who were responsible for our survival. This is not metaphor. It is neurological fact. The nervous system of a child is learning in its first years of life what love looks, feels, and sounds like, what safety looks, feels, and sounds like, what being attended to looks, feels, and sounds like. And it is encoding these patterns not as intellectual knowledge, but as bodily recognition, as the specific combination of signals that the nervous system has learned to associate with the essential experience of being connected to another person. And because the first experience of connection is almost universally imperfect, because the parents who formed our templates were themselves formed by their own imperfect templates, the patterns we learn are patterns that contain both the nourishment and the deprivation together. We do not learn to recognize love as a pure signal. We learn to recognize love as a specific mixture, the particular combination of attention and withdrawal, of being seen and being unseen, of closeness and distance that characterized the first relationships we depended on for our survival. And the nervous system, presented in adulthood with someone who produces that mixture, who creates the specific combination of signals that the body learned to associate with the experience of connection, does not ask whether this is good for you. It asks whether this feels like home. And if it does, it responds with the biochemistry of recognition, of arrival, of finally being in the right place. That biochemistry is powerful, more powerful in most cases than intellectual understanding of the pattern, more powerful than the therapeutic insight that this person resembles your father or your mother in ways that are not good for you, more powerful than the list of what you rationally want in a relationship. It is the body recognizing home, even when home was a place that hurt. This is where Hillman's contribution becomes essential, because the neurological explanation, however accurate, explains the mechanism without addressing the soul's participation in the pattern. Hillman would say, the soul is not simply a victim of its neurological conditioning. The soul is also pursuing something. It is pursuing the resolution of the original wound at the site of the original wound. It is returning to the familiar, not only because the familiar is what the nervous system recognizes, but because the soul, at some level, knows that what was missing in the original relationship must be found, or understood, or mourned, before a genuinely different kind of connection becomes possible. The person who keeps choosing the unavailable partner is not only repeating a neurological habit. They are also, in some deeper sense, continuing to ask the question that the original relationship left unanswered, the question that the parent who could not fully see them left unanswered, the question that the soul has been carrying ever since. The question is not, why does this keep happening to me? The question is, what am I still looking for in this specific kind of dynamic? And is it something I will ever find there? And the honest answer to the second part of that question is almost always no. What you are looking for cannot be found in the person who produces the familiar pain. Not because there is anything wrong with them. Many of them are genuinely capable of love with someone whose nervous system is not organized around their particular frequency. But because what you are looking for is not a specific person, it is the resolution of something that preceded every person you have ever chosen. And that resolution cannot come from outside. It can only come from within, from the slow, difficult, patient work of providing for yourself what the original relationship could not provide, and in doing so, changing what the nervous system recognizes as home. Let me be specific about what this rewiring actually requires, because it is not what most people expect, and it is not what most approaches to this problem recommend. It does not require you to choose people who feel wrong to you. This is one of the most common misunderstandings about the process of changing relational patterns, the idea that because the familiar feels dangerous, the unfamiliar must be right, that the person who does not produce the intense recognition response is therefore the healthy choice. This leads to relationships that feel flat, that lack the quality of aliveness that the person associates with genuine connection, and that are abandoned because they do not feel real. The goal is not to choose the person who feels wrong. The goal is to change what feels right. And what changes what feels right is not intellectual effort. It is the gradual, incremental expansion of the nervous system's capacity for a different kind of nourishment. The kind of nourishment that does not come mixed with the deprivation that the body learned to associate with love. The kind of nourishment that is simply present, consistent, unhurried, unconditioned by the need for the other person's drama or unavailability to make it feel real. This expansion begins not in relationship, but in relationship with yourself, in the specific quality of attention you bring to your own inner life. In the development of what I have been calling in this series the quiet observer, the capacity to be present to your own experience with the same quality of genuine attention that you have been searching for in another person. Because what the nervous system most deeply learned to associate with love is not the specific behavior of the first people who loved you. Underneath the specific behavior is something more fundamental: the experience of being genuinely attended to, of being seen, of having your actual experience met by the actual presence of another. And the first person who can provide this for you is not a future partner, it is you. In the practice of genuine self-attendance, in the sacred hour, in the silence, in the patient, unhurried, non-judgmental attention to what is actually happening inside you, you begin to give the nervous system what it has been searching for in the wrong places, not a substitute for human connection, a foundation for it. The experience, repeated enough times, of being genuinely seen, even if the one doing the seeing is yourself, begins to expand what the nervous system recognizes as the feeling of being loved. And as that expands, what the nervous system reaches toward in other people begins, slowly and without force, to change. There will be a period in this process, often a long period, in which you choose differently, and it feels wrong, in which the person who does not produce the intense recognition response feels flat, unexciting, somehow less real than what you are used to, in which the familiar pull toward the familiar dynamic is present and powerful, and the alternative feels like settling. This is the neurological withdrawal, and it is real. The nervous system, deprived of the specific biochemistry it has learned to associate with love, produces something that feels very much like grief, like absence, like the specific loneliness of someone who has given up the only version of connection they have ever known. It is important to stay with this without immediately reaching for the familiar. Not because the familiar is always bad. Sometimes the familiar dynamic transforms when the person within it transforms, but because the discomfort of the withdrawal is the specific discomfort of the nervous system learning that a different kind of nourishment is possible, and it cannot learn this if the familiar is always available as relief. Saying no to the familiar pull, not with judgment or with willpower alone, but with the genuine understanding that what you are reaching for there cannot be found there, is an act of deep self-knowledge and deep self-respect. It is the recognition that what you have been calling love was also the body's attempt to resolve what the original relationship left unresolved. And that resolution is available, genuinely available, not as a consolation, but as the actual thing, from a different direction entirely. The soul has been trying to come home. It has just been looking in the wrong direction. Set aside 1 hour today, your sacred hour. Sit with the pattern, not to condemn it, not to trace it back to its origin one more time, but to ask it honestly. What have you been trying to provide me with that I have not yet learned to provide for myself? What quality of experience, of being seen, of being attended to, of feeling genuinely real, has been the thing you have been searching for in this specific kind of dynamic? And what would it look like to begin providing that experience not as something that requires a specific kind of partner, but as something I can begin to give myself in the quality of attention I bring to my own inner life? Today, write what comes, not the analysis, the honest, specific, particular answer. Subscribe to this community, not because this path is easy, because you are already someone who has recognized the pattern and is ready to ask not just where it came from, but what it has been trying to find. And that question, asked genuinely, pursued patiently, is the beginning of a genuinely different kind of home. The nervous system can learn new templates, but only when it has been given enough of the real thing to recognize that the familiar was never the only option.